Let's Talk 1041. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show. Good Tuesday. My name is Nick Reed. Democrats finding church on Sunday. Not the way you're supposed to as a civilized people. There's a real, I think for a lot of people, eye-opening awakening here that realize that these nut jobs on the left, they think that what they're doing is going to resonate overwhelmingly with the average American person. And you can tell this because some of the videos you see that are real bad for the anti-ICE activists are posted by those very people. There's one video. This is aside from the infiltration of the church that took place on Sunday, and Don Lemon's playing that. And of course, there's talks that he will be arrested for violating laws, and we'll get into all of that coming up. There's another video that's been circulating, and it is an ICE agent that it pulls up next to a vehicle, and the ICE agent tells the person in the vehicle, hey, or persons in the vehicle, hey, we're out here trying to get a dangerous child sexual predator. That is who we are here to arrest. And you are impeding that by all of, your activities. And they claimed that they were with the press. I don't know whether it was true or not. Saying, oh, no, we're not. And he goes, your car, you are here. You're honking your horn. And he's like, it's just unbelievable because, they know they're going after some of the worst people in existence. And so, this is a video that's circulating because it demonstrates the sort of people overwhelmingly that ICE is going after and the sort of people that these left-wing activists are trying to protect from ICE, that they are helping them evade capture by giving them these different types of warnings. And after you watch the video, you're like, wait a minute here. That video appears to have been taken from inside the vehicle of the individuals being scolded by ICE. This wasn't the ICE agent that was filming this interaction in order to make sure that Americans outside of the area of these in Minneapolis specifically, in an effort to inform people, hey, this is who we're going after. These aren't just, moms and dads. We're talking about violent sexual predators, specifically targeting children. But it wasn't from the ICE agent's perspective. And so that tells us that these people are really, really out of whack in terms of understanding the normal average person's perspective on things. Because somebody that was on the receiving end of the scolding from ICE apparently is the one who posted it. There's another one of the left-wing activists that stormed the church that posted on social media a video of himself challenging Pam Bondi to come get him. And then the gal who apparently arranged and coordinated this incident at the church has posted publicly the names of some of the individuals involved. And they're doing these things. They're quote, telling on themselves because they don't realize they're telling on themselves. This is one of the dangers of groupthink and cutting yourself off from the rest of the world is you lose a sense of what people are going to think about what you're doing. It's one thing to not understand their perspective, but when you don't even recognize what that perspective is going to be, that demonstrates how much you've cut yourself off from the rest of the world. Today, do you know today's supposed to be a massive walkout day? It's another left-wing walkout day.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, because January 20th. This is the 1 year anniversary, if you will. It's been 1 year since Trump was sworn in as president. So apparently there is a call for a mass walkout in protest of Trump. and a walk-in to congressional offices to demand that Trump be impeached. Because, well, of course, what else do Democrats have? Well, if you want to participate in that, we'll make sure you have all those details. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447-KSGF. Now the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 47. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 29. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 48. And taking a look at Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 45.
I yesterday was hearing everything from, we may get some flurries Friday too. We're getting 1.5 feet of snow.
Yeah,
What is the story here?
I've heard that we're gonna get a little bit of snow Friday and mostly Saturday.
Okay.
But I'll double check my resources and I'll keep you updated.
Well, this far out also.
That's true.
It could go either which
You
way.
never know. It is Missouri weather.
No need to not panic though. So might as well just go ahead and panic that it's going to be a massive blizzard. And if it isn't, then you'll just have lots of milk and bread. That's the moral of that story, I suspect. We do have a happy hour scheduled for Friday. I suppose if there is early some sort of really inclement weather, that could change. But in the meantime, plan on joining us at Vineyard Market this Friday from 4 to 6 as we kind of hang out and get ready for a perhaps snowy weekend. That will be our happy hour 4 to 6 on Friday. At a little bit after the top of the hour, we had, of course, you got these national spots, and there was yet again one of those that is telling you can just go online and download a will and do it all yourself for a very cheap price. Now, I can't really speak to the specific legitimacies of that particular company because I'm not familiar with it, but I do know that those quick and easy, you don't have to be an attorney, download do-it-yourself things for very cheap, you usually get what you pay for. We've talked about this with Lori Rook, Ozarks Elder Law, and the importance of having someone who is trained in this area, who is constantly updated with the changing laws, who is familiar with the state that you're in, doing all of this for you. Things when you're talking about the law and you're talking about the government and government's decision to challenge you, should they disagree with what it is that you're asserting in terms of wills or trusts or power of attorney, going to them and being like, well, I downloaded this form off the internet for $199 and it said that's you really want to go that route? Don't recommend it. To make sure that you are fully covered when it comes to what happens to your things when you are gone, or how to pay for a nursing home one day, or power of attorney, medically, economically, whatever the capacity may be. Ozarks Elder Law, 10 area locations, free consultation, and they'll tell you up front this is what it'll cost to get done what needs to be done. You can find them under Nick's endorsements at ksgf.com. Actress Frances Fisher, an actress that you don't know the name necessarily, but if you saw her, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen her in stuff. She is leading a left-wing cast calling for a mass walkout in protest of Trump and a walk-in to congressional offices to demand the president's impeachment. Quote, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Oh, so very clever of her. She was in a movie called Edge of Night, also Titanic, screamed that into a camera at the top of a 2-minute video. Quote, it's past time on January 20th, the 1-year anniversary of this illegal administration. We are demanding that it come to an end. The Remove Coalition Instagram post read, in partnership with the Women's March Free America Walkout, we will then walk into local congressional offices peacefully demanding impeachment for the first nationwide remove the regime. Now, of course, we know what the left's definition of peaceful is. She went on to say, lip service is not sufficient. Congress has a sworn duty to remove a tyrant from office, and we're demanding that they start doing that job. That means not just filing articles of impeachment against cabinet members. Donald Trump must be named on those articles, and members of Congress advancing them must force a vote. The left-wing Women's March also promoting the January 20th protest. The group's website says 2025 was a year of marches that proved our collective strength. Really? What was the result of any of these marches? The fact that you are still demanding, quote, something be done, suggests even you acknowledge that your marches have done nothing. She went on, or that particular organization, Women's March, went on to post, and the threats have grown so we must too. The moment calls for escalated commitment from our movement. On January 20th, we will walk out of work, school, and commerce, because a free America begins the moment we stop cooperating with fascism, the website says. So this is another massive movement in which the left is going to prove how valuable they are to our country, and how everything will come to a screeching halt if they don't participate. I mean, these occurrences appear to come almost monthly now, if not pretty close to it. We've had a number of them that were to demonstrate the economic impact that they would have. I think actually Black Friday was the last one that was supposed to be on a mass scale, and it was to demonstrate how without them, our country was nothing. Without the left, our economy would collapse. Yet these things come and go, just like predictions of some unknown cult leader who says that the mothership is going to come and pick them all up at midnight, and then it doesn't happen, and then everyone who followed it in the news is like, oh yeah, what happened to those guys? Oh, they're still around. It's the same thing. It is a lot of projection of significance and importance, and then no actual results that come along with it, which is why it's humorous that in the posting, they noted that 2025 was a year of marches that proved our collective strength. What did it do? Other than put on full display to the average American what lunatics you are. The screaming. You watch some of these videos up in Minneapolis in which you have members of ICE that will, in some instances, trying to track down people that have been convicted murderers, rapists, child molesters, and these left-wing lunatics stand in the street beating pots and pans and blowing whistles to warn the criminals to go into further hiding because ICE is on their trail. And you just their behavior. These are people, on one hand, they're not serious people, but unserious people can be dangerous. And the spoiled toddler-like behavior of people who demonstrate they have no ability to have intellectual conversations. Instead, they just scream and stomp their feet. And now storm Christian churches during service. Now, we will get to the latest information on that, but I do, coming up, want to share the the New York Times is very unhappy because of a new acronym for liberal white women. It's awful, which stands for Affluent White Female Urban Liberal. So this is an acronym that is being attached to so many of these left-wing women that go out in the street and stomp their feet and they scream and they cry and try to run over law enforcement with their vehicles. And this acronym, the New York Times, are very, very concerned that that this term is being used to describe these women. That coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Barry from Pinnaker Honda joined us on Friday out at Scramblers and ticked off a great number of deals they have, whether they're 26 purchases or leases. For example, 26 Honda Civic sedan LX lease for only $199 a month. And then even when it comes to some of those pre-owned vehicles, incredibly low interest rates there. The Certified Dream Deal sales event rates as low as 1.49% for select certified pre-owned vehicles. But thought I'd share with you something Bruce posted in terms of his review, noting that we've been customers of Don Wessel, which is now Pinnaker Honda, since 1986, and their employees and service department that will continue to bring us back. Wonderful and honest service. Probably the best service department in Springfield, Missouri. Would certainly recommend to anyone. Also want to mention our service rep, Josh, who we've worked with for a number of years. Very professional, trustworthy, remembers his customers. Josh, being recently promoted, introduced me to Devin as our new service rep. Devin is a wonderful and highly customer-oriented young man. Highly recommend owning Hondas as well as our local Pinnaker dealership. Pinnaker Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. There is an acronym that increasingly is being used in order to describe the suburban left-wing white liberal woman. And these individuals are often seen, of course, at these protests. And they're very similar in terms of their behavior. They act like 5-year-old toddlers. They scream and they yell. And this isn't brand new in regards to ICE. But we saw many of these individuals with Trump's first win, and you see their behavior oftentimes on university campuses or where they'll get together and literally scream at the sky. Literally just scream at the sky. These are emotionally irrational, unhinged, hysterical individuals. And all caps, the acronym AWFUL is increasingly being used in order to describe this category of people, and it stands for affluent, white, female, urban liberal. And the New York Times had a piece on this. They even contacted the Department of Homeland Security about the growing popularity of this term. DHS spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin told the New York Times, "I'm more concerned with facts on the ground than I am with acronyms." That was her quote to the New York Times. And the New York Times, their piece noting that it's largely conservatives and Trump supporters that are utilizing this term. And so they went, where else do you go to explain normal people but to academia? You go to professors on these liberal college campuses, people who have demonstrated time and time again, they know so little about the average person, but they're experts. So it doesn't matter whether they actually have a track record of being accurate when it comes to figuring people out. Why is it that the New York Times goes to left-wing academia to explain the behavior of normal people? Well, because it will validate their belief that there's something wrong with the average person and the average Trump supporter. Academia, probably because of their brain smarts, have it figured out. Rutgers political scientist Dr. Shauna Shames told the New York Times that the term stems from anxieties about race, gender, and immigration among Trump's base. See, we're all just so racist and so misogynistic and so xenophobic that those uncertainties have caused us to collectively create this acronym in order to describe specifically the women who are involved in this behavior. Now, of course, you and I understand why the acronym exists. And it doesn't take any affluent political scientist to break it down. It's because these people are awful. They're nuts. Can you imagine observing the behavior? You're a New York Times reporter, and you see some of these individuals labeled as awful, in which it describes exactly, again, who these people are, what category they fit, affluent, white, female, urban liberals. And you see that they scream and yell hysterically. You see in the more extreme examples where you've got the one utilizing her vehicle in order to hit a member of ICE. Many of these people, you can't even have a conversation with them because when you do, they just start screaming at you. So observing that behavior, yet being mystified as to why some people think that they aren't normal human beings. Why it is that some people, when they interact with a woman whose only response is to scream and perhaps assault you, why on earth would a person find that behavior to be something that could be described as awful? We need to get a political science to break this down for us. You don't need a political scientist. The acronym is awful because, one, it describes the category of person, again, affluent, white, female, urban liberal, but also, at the same time, very conveniently, just describes their behavior and the way that normal people think of someone who behaves this way. They're awful. They're awful people. Not that difficult to determine. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 47. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 29. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 48. And for Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 45.
A couple of your text messages in the Pyramid Roofing Company Talking text line. Morning, Nick and Sarah. Awful AWFL has been around a while. New York Times just noticed. Going to give it the Streisand effect. Hey, and then another saying AWFL has been around for a while. Why did they add urban and say it's new? Well, they added urban because, I would guess, wasn't part of whatever meeting came up with it. Obviously, I'm joking. These things just develop organically. With the ICE raids occurring, and I would also say combined with the way that the hysterical left acted as Trump would deploy National Guard to Washington, D.C., for example, and in order to try to make the city safer for the citizens there, it was general. You'd see a lot of these crazy white women there, and these are urban areas. This is something that, while liberal women anywhere are pretty insane, there is a high concentration of them in these urban areas. So other than just getting a bit more specific in describing these women, I don't know that there is any other particular reason for it. And you know, like I said, I don't know. It just seems to me that that's probably what's going on, and it's just really honing that down. But I think most, again, people can agree that they are pretty awful. They're just, what is it with your kind?
I'm not claiming them.
I saw a posting from a woman who was, she was like, listen, don't get me wrong. I'm really glad I have the right to vote, but I'm almost willing to give it up because of what these, this is the only category that Kamala Harris won. With the margin, or that she had an increase in what it was. It's the every other demographic of voter, Kamala Harris had a much lower, in some instances, a much lower success rate than had been had by Democrats before. The only category in which she created gains was with these white women,
the miserable white women.
Yeah, and it is what J.D. Vance was talking about whenever he was getting all the flack for talking about single, women who just, or crazy cat ladies, I think you referred to. This is what he was talking about. These people that are just miserable in life, and they're highly emotional, they're highly agitated. It cracks me up when some of these people that are, these women on the left, that will make these postings asking where all the men are, where are all the liberal men. What man, what human would find any sort of joy or pleasure being in a relationship with someone that behaves this way? And I'm telling you, I seriously think about this stuff. When you see some of these women that just scream, they just will scream in the faces of these ICE agents, or sometimes they'll have megaphones and they'll scream into the megaphone. I'm thinking, can you imagine being in a relationship with that woman and she doesn't get her way? You know how she must act in private if that's how she's willing to act in public, and not be embarrassed by it, feel as if she's justified. Look, I know that you also get men that can behave irrationally in this capacity as well. They're not as numerous as the women, but I also suspect that no real woman is going to want a man like that. Even liberal women, this is part of the conflict they have, because whether they want to admit it or not, there is the thing that generally, for reproductive purposes, draws a woman towards a man, they want to deny. They want to pretend and tell themselves, no, that's bad, it's toxic masculinity. Well, then, yeah, you're going to be very frustrated. Because what it is that as human beings cause us to gravitate towards one another, a man towards a woman and a woman towards a man, so that they then have children, and then their children, and so we continue to exist as a race, are the things that these people on the left preach as being horrible traits. And that is in complete defiance of reality. And they box themselves into this world in which they are absolutely miserable. And I mean, you could tell looking at their face. These are miserable individuals. Don Lemon. Now, there are a couple of different stories about what sort of legal trouble Don Lemon may be in here. I think most of you recognize that what freedom of speech isn't is a free pass to storm into a private facility, specifically of religious purpose, and disrupt those individuals' right to assemble. That is not what freedom of speech means. And the left, I don't want to say they know it, because, and I'm not trying to be insulting, but that requires thinking. And I just don't think that they do it. In their minds, freedom of speech means they get to do or say whatever they want to, whenever they want to, in whatever venue they want to, no matter whom it's disrupting. as long as they want to do it. Now, of course, on the flip side, those rules don't apply at all. In fact, they don't want people to be able to pray outside of an abortion clinic peacefully. That, in their minds, is a violation of their constitutional rights. And so I don't know that they even think this stuff through, but this is the world that we live in with these people. And so Lemon, who is a so-called independent journalist, since being fired by CNN in 2023, has been documenting the Minnesota chaos following the fatal ICE shooting of Renee Nicole Good. On Sunday, he entered the city's church during a service along with anti-ICE agitators, began filming, telling viewers that, quote, the freedom to protest is what the First Amendment is all about. Well, again, this is like saying if there's someone I don't like, I break into their home in the middle of the night and start yelling slogans at them, that's just my First Amendment right. Well, not really. Fox News reporting, though, Lemon has been put on notice by the Justice Department. He stood by his reporting, agreed with I've Had It podcast host Jennifer Welch on Monday that the backlash against him is being used to intimidate him as an independent, gay, black, happy, successful man. Yes, that's what the problem is here. Now, there's been talk of prosecuting him. There's been some reference to laws that were put into place to protect people from the Klan doing this very sort of thing. There's also what is called the FACE Act, and this is the act that makes it a federal crime to use or threaten to use force to injure, intimidate, or interfere with a person seeking reproductive health services or with a person lawfully trying to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. Now, that all came about because the left was trying to craft legislation that would make it virtually impossible for people to stand outside of abortion clinics and with the goal in mind of getting women to change their mind about having an abortion. And the compromise, if you will, here in order to get some Republican support was to also add to it this religious component, saying, okay, you don't want people disrupting abortions, then we also want it to include people who are sitting in church. We don't want left-wingers to be able to storm churches and disrupt. And that became part of the FACE Act. And it's never been used for that. It's been used quite a bit in order to go after people who have peacefully protested abortion clinics, but it's never been utilized in this other capacity. And I suspect as we get closer to potential arrest of Don Lemon, whether it is the Ku Klux Klan Act or the utilization of the FACE Act, we'll hear about how it's never been used for this purpose before, and they'll portray it as if it is some sort of weird reading and that this wasn't the intent. Well, this just hasn't been utilized before because we haven't really had a situation like this where you have a bunch of left-wingers barge into a church disrupting the service. And that doesn't mean that this wasn't this was the entire purpose of putting it as part of the FACE Act, was for a situation just like this. But again, they're going to oftentimes reference it's never really been used in this capacity before, and they will talk about the dangerous implications and how this could be used to go after anyone who even disagrees with the church. We'll start hearing about Christian nationalism. But make no mistake about it, whether one believes or agrees with this component of the FACE law or the FACE Act, this is the intent. But we'll hear about Don Lemon and how this is suddenly the media that dismisses so-called independent journalists will talk about the chilling effect this will have on journalists. We'll begin to hear about what an important part of our public conversation people like Don Lemon are. And increasingly, people are calling for the Trump administration to really put a stomp down on this. And frankly, a lot of people, including conservative and pro-Trump commentators, like, what is taking so long to, and Trump has signaled on a number of occasions, essentially, better watch out, otherwise we'll get in there and put a stop to this. And people are beginning to publicly say, you need to put a stop to this. But these individuals place audio of one of the unhinged, it's actually a guy, who was part of the raid of the church and his challenge to Pam Bondi to come get him. And a number of lawmakers, Democrats, one of which was saying, we need more of this, encouraging people on the left to infiltrate more churches. All that coming up. One of the anti-ICE protesters who stormed the Minneapolis church this weekend, a school board member in St. Paul. What a shock that is. Another one of the individuals, this is actually a quote guy. And he's not transgender. I just don't think. And these unhinged, hysterical individuals, to me, I don't know. It just doesn't say manliness to me, no matter how much you yell. And he posted a video, and he has an F Trump hat on it, and he is responding to Pam Bondi's notation that they are going to hold these people accountable.
Yesterday, with the team protested these white supremacists. A pastor of the church is a fucking ICE leader in the city. How can you be a fucking pastor and be a fucking ICE agent? Fuck 'em. They want to come after me? Fuck 'em. Well, how can they live so comfortably while the fucking people from Somalia that are in this country legally, that have fucking citizenship, can't even go to their mosque and pray? How do they deserve any fucking different? Fuck those fucking Nazis. Come and get me, Pam Bondi, you fucking traitorous bitch. All power to the people.
Well, that guy doesn't sound dangerous at all, does he?
No, not at all.
That's just another mostly peaceful Democrat activist, that's all. You've got a transgender state rep in Minnesota, of course, calling on more of this behavior, not less. Minnesota Transgender State Rep Lee Finke called on leftists to storm more churches in protest of ICE. The Justice Department currently, of course, investigating for potential violations of the FACE Act. Quote, the FACE Act is a long-standing federal statute that prohibits force, threats, obstruction of any kind or any kind of interference with religious places of worship, and it carries criminal penalties in violation, according to an official from the DOJ. However, the transgender rep said anti-ICE protests must continue to storm churches until ICE is out of the state. Posting yesterday, protesters disrupted services at, this obviously was from yesterday, City's Church in St. Paul, where the leader of the local ICE office also serves as a pastor. The protest has caused outrage, promises of retribution and prosecution, and the usual round of upset. But it has had me thinking for the past 24 hours of the action of ACT UP and Wham in 1989, who staged a die-in and protest in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, an action that similarly brought condemnation during a time when an out-of-control crisis was left to its destruction for far too long. Actions like this, nonviolent resistance in the face of government inaction or oppression, are essential, and they must continue until ICE is out of our state, the administration is out of the White House, and dignity and humanity for all of our neighbors is achieved. Is it really dignified and humane to warn some of which are convicted child rapists that they're about to be apprehended? There was a period of time, I believe, that many people felt at some point the Democrat Party would go, okay, now wait a minute, this is too far. That day is never going to come. With the exception of a John Fetterman, whom the organization that helped get him elected is now actively trying to unseat him. There are no Democrats that are saying this is not us. There are no Democrats saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't storm Christian churches, particularly in Minneapolis, where just last year a left-wing trans gunman went in and shot and killed people, including children, at a church. No one in the Democrat Party is saying, in fact, to the contrary, they are saying we need more. On yesterday's appearance of CNN's The Source, Representative Alida Grijalva, a Democrat from Arizona, said that when people find out someone that's supposed to be, this is the quote, someone that's supposed to be speaking for the community in church is a federal agent that is running ICE in their communities, they have the right to go in there. No. So you've got now what is clear, whether one likes it or not, violation of federal law being encouraged by elected Democrats. They are so far past the point of ever saying this is too far. Town Hall reporting that the left wanting it both ways. They don't want borders or immigration enforcement for people to prove their identities, unless the left are the one making the demands. Just the other day, a leftist in Minneapolis accosted a CNN reporter, demanded to know what outlet she was from. They also set up an autonomous zone in Minneapolis, one that ran for several blocks, where residents weren't allowed to drive to their homes. It was being referred to by the left-wing activists as a no-go zone. And it was reported that the far-left agitators and mobs are stopping vehicles to make civilians prove that they're not with ICE or DHS, and then bullying the civilians for driving the wrong sort of vehicle. Well, of course they are. All in the name of fighting authoritarianism, we're told. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. So the let's see, the Western Journal has a piece. Oops, leader of anti-ICE church invasion just made prosecutor's job a lot easier. And they noted that she posted a video of all of the folks storming this church in violation of federal law. And in a caption to the post, she wrote, "Friends, here's a clip of our demonstration this morning at City's Church in St. Paul. David Easterwood is a pastor at the church and the acting field director for the ICE office in St. Paul. It's time for judgment to begin, and it will begin in the house of God. Thank you to all the activists who showed up." And then she starts listing them all by name. Independent journalists, Georgia Fort, Don Lemon, Dwoke Farmer 2, Brixton Hughes. Special thanks to Monique Sollers Duty, Shottelin Allen, Satara Strong Allen for co-organizing this mission from Black Lives Matter Minutes. And she goes through and not only lists the specific first and last names of some of these lawbreakers, but their role in it, including those who helped organize it. Now, many people will see this as stupidity. And, of course, that is part of it. But the other part of it is this entitled attitude that the left has been allowed to cultivate, in which they believe they are above the law. And that the people they want to be able to violate the law should be able to violate the law. It is the combination of stupidity and that two-tiered justice system, or however you want to term it, in their belief system, that results in them proudly posting the crimes they commit and listing off by name the offenders. News in 60 seconds. Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show. Our number 2. We're streaming live, KSGF.com. I think this is a humorous story. Minneapolis software engineers mistaken for ICE agents while eating lunch harassed by anti-ICE crowd. Now, the story itself is not unusual. The left, it really is like a witch hunt for people on the left. They just will point their finger, yell witch, and then everyone on the left will descend upon them. It doesn't matter whether the accused is actually a witch or not. They don't care. We saw it right here in Springfield with a local gun shop owner who was falsely accused by Democrat activists of being the actual ICE agent that was hit by the left-wing activist and then fired upon her. Even though his name it was somewhat similar, but it was different, and he lives in Springfield and has a gun shop here. But that did not stop the left from going after him. Even though he didn't look like, everything about it was provably not him. They don't care. Doesn't make a bit of difference whatsoever. Because they are insane. And so you had a handful of these software engineers that are just eating lunch at a place called Clancy's Deli. And suddenly people descend upon them, these anti-ICE protesters from the left, screaming and yelling at them. Now, here's the hilarious part of it all. They knew it was coming. The reason they knew it was coming was because one of the software engineers is an anti-ICE leftist and was on the text group or the app or whatever it was that was alerting all of the protesters that there are ICE agents eating lunch at this place. The person who got the message on it was a chat, the Southwest Minneapolis Rapid Response Chat, is aligned with the anti-ICE cause. One of the engineers who gave his name as Lee told the news outlet, quote, "My friend was shocked. He's on the anti-ICE side politically. He lives nearby." Well, and he's obviously not just on their side. He is signed up to receive these messages pointing out where ICE agents are for the purpose of harassment. So he's one of these people. And his buddy said, "My friend was shocked. He's on the anti-ICE side politically. He lives nearby. He's eaten there before, and suddenly he's seen messages saying that we're ICE." After the alert was shared, dozens of anti-ICE agitators flocked to the restaurant, peering into the windows, according to a video filmed by one of the men. Once the group left, they were met on the street with derision from the crowd. "You're a blanking bootlicker, blank," one of the agitators could be heard. "Get out of our blanking neighborhood," screamed another. Next thing we know, people are yelling, "I hope you die," and calling us pedophiles. One of the men tried explaining that they were software engineers just trying to have a meal. Quote, "We do custom apps for a whole bunch of companies around Minneapolis in the country, or Minnesota in the country." Still, the crowd appeared unconvinced. Well, of course, because these people are insane. One of the men asked, "Do I look like an ICE agent?" which prompted a woman to reply, "Yeah, you look like a blanking ICE agent. Get the blank out," another person is heard saying as whistles are heard in the background. The man said, quote, "This is what's wrong with your guys." And a woman asked, "Would you support us?" To which he replied, "The way you guys are acting, no, and I don't support ICE either. I'm just trying to enjoy my lunch." Well, they don't like it when it happens to them, do they? Then there's this, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the show. Increasingly, you have these Democrat activists that are warning child predators that they're about to be caught. So they're aiding and abetting child rapists. Now, they don't care is the thing. It doesn't matter to them. That is irrelevant because it's not someone who forcibly rapes a 3-year-old that's evil in the equation. It is the ICE officer. And let's see, that's not the one. All right, here we go. So this is video taken of an ICE agent confronting, I say confronting, he pulls up next to another vehicle, trying to explain to them the sort of people that the left wing is protecting.
We're here to arrest a child sex offender. And you guys are out here honking.
No, we're pressed. We're not.
That vehicle right there is honking and impeding our investigations while we're trying to arrest a child sex offender. That's who you guys are protecting. Insane.
And insane is right. I don't know that those individuals actually were with the press. I think that a number of these Democrat activists are trying to use that as cover, believing that that will just allow them to somehow fly under the radar. Interesting side note, you could tell by the gentleman's accent, he's a Hispanic male. And so you have, in all likelihood, what are a bunch of white women that are disrupting a Hispanic man's sworn duty to try to make that city safer by arresting a convicted child predator. And they're doing what they can in order to help warn the child predator that he is about to be captured. Yes, that's the humanity we keep hearing from the left.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 47. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 29. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 48. And for Thursday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 45.
All right, just a few more items that have developed or been developing regarding Minnesota, and the Insurrection Act is something that Trump has referenced the utilization of, to the point many people are saying, what's the holdup already? I mean, I think it's a valid question to ask. The question is, what has to occur for this Insurrection Act to be utilized? And even outlets like left-wing CNN, when their legal experts acknowledge that, yeah, I mean, Trump has extremely broad authority as president of the United States when to use the Insurrection Act, and so this is legit.
As the Pentagon has ordered 1,500 active duty soldiers to prepare for a possible deployment to Minnesota. President Trump is threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act, continues to, in response to the unrest there. Can you explain for everyone, remind everyone as we start this week and what that could mean, the Insurrection Act and what it does and doesn't allow?
So, Kate, the Insurrection Act would be a very dramatic step by the president. This is a law that allows the president essentially to take our military forces, and I don't mean National Guard, I mean Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and turn them into local police, local law enforcement, which ordinarily is not permitted. A couple things to know about the Insurrection Act. First of all, it gives the president very broad authority. He can use it if there is a rebellion or insurrection, or much more broadly, even if it's necessary to enforce federal laws. Second of all, it hasn't come up much because it doesn't happen that often, but when it has reached the courts have given the president very, very broad deference to invoke the act as he sees fit. But Kate, just for historical context, this Insurrection Act has not been used since 1992 after the Los Angeles riots. And before that, it was used in the 50s and 60s to desegregate our schools when certain towns and states resisted the Supreme Court's order in Brown versus Board of Education. So Donald Trump certainly does have broad authority here if he wants to invoke the Insurrection Act, but I think it would be wildly out of step with the way it's been invoked over our history.
Now, the last portion of that last statement is extremely incorrect, even by his own description. To say that to invoke the Insurrection Act now would be wildly out of step with the reasons that it was utilized in the past. Well, the LA riots, it was utilized because there was either an unwillingness or an inability to stop the law breaking from occurring. And this is the same thing in Minneapolis. Whether it is intentional or it's just negligence. And it's not just attacks on ICE, but now we've seen the infiltration, the storming of churches, or a church, with the call by a Democrat lawmaker in Minneapolis or Minnesota to continue, saying it's the duty of the people to continue to storm churches until ICE is run out of the entire state. This is the other part, noting the usage of the Insurrection Act, because during desegregation, you had local governments, you had state governments refusing to comply with what would be federal orders because of a Supreme Court decision being made, and that is what's going on here as well. It is the refusal of the state to enforce or to allow the feds to enforce laws that are on the books. Again, this isn't something that Donald Trump just one day made up. He did not create these immigration laws. He did not one day up and decide that he was going to handpick individuals for deportation. These are individuals by way of law that was voted on by Congress. It went through the House. It went through the Senate, got voted on, got passed, went to the White House, was signed into law. And you have the state that is refusing on a governmental level to adhere to the federal laws and going so far as to try and obstruct it. So this is very, very similar to the usage of the Insurrection Act when it came to the governments, certain state governments, refusing to comply with federal law regarding desegregation. It really is a hybrid of the two between that and the LA riots of 92. There is also chatter that the Department of Justice is investigating Tim Walz and the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, for obstruction. That, according to a local news outlet. Two federal officials Friday telling WCCO of Minneapolis Area TV that a federal investigation is looking into whether Walz and Frey tried to block U.S. immigration and custom enforcement from carrying out operations to enforce immigration law. Reports of the investigation come after increased tensions in the area after the ICE agent fatally shot, blah, 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 so forth, so forth. So there is potential legal implications here in terms of obstructing justice and hearkening back again to the Democrat lawmakers in the South that refuse to comply with federal law regarding desegregation and the use of the Insurrection Act for those purposes. Incidentally, Town Hall has a piece about the number of violent criminals that have been arrested due to the ICE operations. And while Kristi Noem had announced more than 10,000 criminal aliens had been arrested in Minnesota since the Trump administration took office, since the launch of Operation Metro Surge in December, DHS has apprehended over 3,000 aliens with prior convictions ranging from murder, rape, and pedophilia. I think that we fail to appreciate the sort of people that are being taken off the streets. This is just since December. 3,000 convicted murderers, rapists, and pedophiles. We were talking about the story earlier as to these software engineers that were at a deli, falsely accused of being ICE agents and among other names. And the left has taken to calling ICE agents apparently pedophiles when they're the ones that are arresting the pedophiles. And the Democrat activists are trying to warn the convicted pedophiles so that they can get away. The projection party. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Weather permitting, it's going to have our happy hour Friday 4 to 6 at Vineyard Market in Ozark. Now, this is, I say weather permitting. It doesn't sound as if it's a definite thing, but there is a potential for some wintry weather. It appears as if originally that was expected to make its way into the area Friday, but that may be shifting into Saturday. But as you know, any given day in the Ozarks, we could have that sort of thing drop on us. But barring any inclement weather that prevents us from safely traveling about and getting together, we will have happy hour 4 to 6 this Friday at Vineyard Market. Jim Clyburn bringing back an oldie but a goodie. And I say an oldie. The Democrats never have, at least in the modern era, backed off of their projection that the Republican Party is the party of racism, when historically the Democrats have, they fought a bloody war and lost many lives in order to argue that their property rights allowed them to own slaves. They defied the federal government when it came to desegregation. Joe Biden bragged himself about how he was really good friends and on the same pages with a lot of the segregationists, and argued against busing kids. The civil rights movement, the blocking, the filibusters taking place by way of the Democrats. So when Democrats try and portray Republicans as being what they actually have been for generations, it's somewhat amusing, but at the same time, educated people understand that there are very uneducated people in the country who believe this stuff. Those people oftentimes get their news and their information from shows like The View, which is why people like Jim Clyburn visit those people and make absurdly insane claims, as he did yesterday.
Elise, I used to teach history. And I used to tell my students all the time, anything that's happened before can happen again. When that phone call was made, find me 11,740 votes. When we saw those people rapping on those windows up in Michigan, trying to set up separate sets of electors, same thing in Pennsylvania. They were trying to set up a process that will allow this country to return to what it was in 1876 when the election got thrown into the House of Representatives, and they were able to overturn what Abraham Lincoln and the Congress had done, successfully getting rid of slavery. That is what they're attempting to do today.
These ignorant old hags. I don't know what it is about this just drives me nuts. And I think it's because it is as if they're trying to sound like they're deep in thought whenever you have these incoherent statements and claims being made. Like, oh yes, This is insanity. And the sitting around and oh yes, like you're not even making any sense here. By the way, the claim that Republicans are trying to set up a process in which the House of Representatives would decide the president, that's a process that already was set up constitutionally. When there is a tie of the electoral vote, that's when it goes to Congress, and that has been done before. That's not something Republicans are trying to set up. For someone who noted himself as being a history teacher, it's just very shocking that he apparently didn't know that. We got a traffic update now. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 47. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 29. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 48. And for Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 45.
There's part of me that really enjoys watching this Mamdani thing play out because he is thus far acting almost as if he's trolling people as a socialist. People who understand socialism understand that it is a lie peddled off this economic equality desired outcome, yet the people who are in charge always live these lavish lifestyles. They always live the lavish lifestyles. See, those rules don't apply to them. The everyone sharing wealth equally, well, except for them in their mansions, their lavish lifestyles, and at the same time, the promises of everything wonderful doesn't come to fruition. And much of this was seen even before, well, it was at his, I guess, swearing in event, and people were showing up expecting there to be free food and everyone's going to have a wonderful time. And instead, they essentially stood in this caged in area with no restrooms, no food. And they were all just shocked and disappointed what they had been told that they were going to get, in which everyone was just going to have a great time and food and drink and restrooms. And none of that actually happened. They just couldn't figure that out. The promises of housing run by nonprofit organizations instead of the evil capitalists, we've already seen the damaging effect it has on tenants. One of the facilities that Mamdani held a press conference in front of as an example of what he wants for all New Yorkers is a facility that's populated by people in which it's a particular apartment complex that was purchased by a nonprofit years ago, and universally everyone who lives there say we want it the way it was before. Things are so much worse now than ever. The poor get poorer, the rich get richer. This is socialism. Mamdani's latest, and then of course he decided he had no choice but to move into Gracie Mansion out of his apartment. Now, he did have a choice. There is no legal requirement that the mayor of New York actually live in Gracie Mansion. It is a perk that allows you to live like the wealthy and elite, and it should come as no shock that he decided that's probably what he should do. Apparently, however, it wasn't quite hoity-toity enough for him, as it's been revealed that he's installing bidets in the bathrooms. He really, really wants to cosplay the rich guy. New York City Mayor Mamdani officially moved into the historic Gracie Mansion to live like the rich and famous. He's already hoping to make changes. The mayor spoke to reporters January 12th and shared his aspirational hope to have a few bidets installed in the mayor's residence. Why should he have to use toilet paper like the peasants? Quote, one thing we will change is we'll be installing a few bidets into Gracie Mansion. That's an aspirational hope. We'll see if we can get it done. I mean, it's kind of appalling. One prominent New York City Democrat mocked the mayor's idea, painting it as a rich man's fantasy coming from someone who preaches socialism. This is how every socialist leader lives once they get into power. Prominent Democrat who asked to remain anonymous said he's been mayor for a minute. Now the socialist thinks he's flush with so much cash he can buy bidets because it's other people's money. Of course, this is how it works. Everywhere it's done. And the sick thing of it is that the people who genuinely get excited over someone like Mamdani, believing that he is one of them, they will still support him. It doesn't matter how many promises don't come to be. It doesn't matter how their quality of life gets diminished. And it doesn't matter that he uses their money, taxpayer dollars, in order to increasingly make his life one of the lap of luxury. They'll still support him. Oh, he's one of us. Also at Town Hall, writing that some at the New York Times already attacking Mamdani, not because of the bidets, but because he has no deputy mayors that are black. After winning the Democratic mayoral primary last year, Zohran Mamdani acknowledged that his victory came without much support from black voters. He pledged to do better. Mr. Mamdani spent the next few months working to improve his relationship with black leaders in New York City and vowed from black church pulpits around the city that he would have a diverse administration representative of the city. But in his role out as mayor, the New York Times writes, Mamdani has appointed 5 deputy mayors, none of them black, only one Latino. On Thursday, Mamdani announced Afua Atta Mensah, who led his campaign outreach to black voters as the new chief equity officer and commissioner of the mayor's Office of Equity and Racial Justice. The mayor also reaffirmed his commitment to releasing a long overdue and mandated plan to address racial disparities in the city of New York, vowing to do so in his first 100 days. The moves were welcomed by black and Latino leaders, but they still question Mamdani's commitment to racial equity. Taekwana Henderson Rivers, a well-known black political consultant, said in an interview she believed it was damaging that there's no black deputy mayor. Quote, he already doesn't have the best relationship with the black community, and it seems like he's not interested in us because there's no representation in his kitchen cabinet. Because he knows it doesn't matter. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. Spring will be here at some point. The weather will be nice, and you get that renewed vigor. You think, I'm really going to work out in the yard this year. We're really going to start enjoying the outdoors. But maybe you don't have the accommodations to really, truly capitalize off that outdoor space. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, they can do that for you. I reach out to them now. If you want to be enjoying it spring into summer, they do get booked because they are the absolute best in terms of quality, in terms of craftsmanship, in terms of expertise, the designs themselves, be it just a small, intimate area or something much larger for gatherings with an outdoor kitchen and entertainment center. They can do it, and they do it all, but they're not going to be there in a couple of weeks. It takes time because of the high demand. of their services. And so maybe you're thinking about putting any sort of tax refund back into your home as an investment, then now would be a good time to reach out and start those conversations. Or maybe you're building new. I always recommend if you're building a business or your home, do it from the get-go. That way it's part of the overall original project. HunterHardscapes.com. You can find them under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. The left, the Democrat Party, as you know, is all about virtue signaling. And they have gotten away with it so long, it doesn't matter how absurdly obvious it is that it is just virtue signaling. They don't even attempt to demonstrate that it's more than virtue signaling. Everything's labels. You know, Ma'am Donnie, going to have the single most diverse cabinet ever, yet the virtue signaling, to whatever degree it gets done, isn't enough. He's going to be a mayor of New York that represents every man. Immediately, though, moves into, by choice, Gracie Mansion, now talking about wanting bidets throughout his mansion. Bernie Sanders. I love this story because it's so typical Democrat. You may be familiar with the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, and it has a board people from all over the country. And that board meets twice a year, and people from all over the country that are part of the board fly in from wherever it is, even if it's on the other side of the United States, in order to carry out their duties as a board member. Bernie Sanders has been on that board for 18 years. The New York Post is reporting, despite that, he has not attended a single meeting ever, despite the fact that it is essentially in his backyard of Washington, D.C. At what point do these constituencies tell the Democrats enough is enough? I'm not here to claim that simply because you've been used, abused, taken advantage of as a constituent by the Democrat Party, that by default that means you suddenly need to be and support and vote for Republican. But for Pete's sakes, any level of self-respect? This is the party of anti-Semitism. Do we really believe Bernie Sanders is committed to the cause of raising awareness about the Holocaust and the dangers of anti-Semitism to the point he's actually going to attend meetings? This is nothing other than pandering. 18 years and could not bother to go to any one single meeting? What's the point in being on the board? Well, we know what the point is. It's virtue signaling. It's a label. It's the ability to go to Jewish constituencies and say that I'm on this Holocaust board, making sure that everybody understands the importance of fighting back against anti-Semitism. Not important enough to attend even one meeting in 18 years. Then there's the pandering to the transgender activist. Only one out of nearly 20 surveyed Democrats that are considered potential runs for the presidency, only one acknowledged that a man cannot become a woman. Fox News reporting that only one out of nearly 20 Democrats who may run for president would say definitively that a man cannot become a woman, according to a new report. The Democrat Party sure is mainstream, isn't it? Axios questioned top Democrats who are considered possible 2028 hopefuls on the trans issue and found that, quote, most didn't want to talk. including former Vice President Kamala Harris, New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, and California Governor Gavin Newsom. I'd almost rather these people stand up for what they claim they believe in. The questions were whether transgender girls who were born male should participate in girls' sports, whether transgender youths under 18 should be allowed to be placed on puberty blockers and hormones. Quote, can a man become a woman? Only former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel would definitively answer, saying his responses were unchanged from an interview last year when he said a man can't become a woman and biological boys should not play in girls' sports. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg also responded to the question, Shapiro doubling down on his previous comment that local sports officials should be the ones in charge of determining the participation of transgender athletes in sports, but his personal view was that trans youths don't deserve an unfair advantage on the playing field. So that position is one I think increasingly these people are going to take, in which it's not taking a position at all. Well, it's a local issue. Now, we are to understand that this is a civil rights issue, and that what the transgender community is going through is the same sort of struggle that the black community went through in this country and so many other marginalized people have gone through. This is the way that it's presented by the left. So if you have Democrats like Pete Buttigieg and Josh Shapiro who say that this is something that, despite their personal beliefs, they think should be decided at the local level, does that also apply to every civil rights issue? When it comes to the issue of race, if somebody wants to ban black players from being on a team, does Shapiro then still stick to the position that, hey, listen, I got my beliefs and everything, but that's a local decision? Pete Buttigieg, if there is a local jurisdiction that doesn't want homosexuals participating or sharing showers with other individuals of the same sex, would you take the same position of, well, I may have my personal beliefs, but ultimately I think it's up for the local jurisdiction and the local coaches to decide? Is that the position you'd take? I suspect not. That is a position in which clearly they're trying to walk a line, but it doesn't work that way with the left. And this is the beast that the left has created in this country, in which intolerance leads the way every day. And so they're left-wing extremists that believe girls should take a back seat to boys, and boys ultimately get to decide with whom and against whom they get to compete, that if you even try to take a position of, well, maybe sometimes that that is not how your constituency operates. It is either complete compliance or you are betraying the cause and labeled an enemy. And this is why it is that people who run for office as a Democrat end up having to run to the left in order to survive the extremists within their party that increasingly are becoming the actual base of the Democrat Party. There's some Josh Shapiro, incidentally. He's got a book coming out. And among other things, he claims that during the interview process for him to be the vice presidential candidate under Kamala Harris, that her campaign wanted to know if he was a double agent for Israel. So, you know how we discussed the anti-Semitism is what prevented Kamala Harris from picking him? He apparently is lifting the lid on this, and it appears to be quite true. Some of the other stuff from his upcoming book, as these excerpts get released in a moment. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. I wanted to read a review for the Pyramid Roofing Company, and this is a big one because this one comes from someone in the insurance industry. Dakota with Shelter Insurance wrote, "Thank you to Tony with the Pyramid Roofing Company for stopping by my office and taking a look at the roof. If you have any concerns about your roof, give him a call and have the Pyramid Roofing Company team come out to take a look. They have over 30 years of service in this industry." And if, someone in the insurance industry is picking you for their roofing needs, I think you're doing something right. And of course, speaking of insurance, the Pyramid team, they work with you through the insurance process without making you sign anything, which not all roofing companies do that. And they also offer free roof inspections. So if it is time to have the Pyramid team out to your home, reach out to the Pyramid Roofing Company. You can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
I wanted to just throw this in real quick before we get to Shapiro's book, Josh Shapiro, Governor Shapiro's book, because we were talking about the transgender issue. And there's a musical called Six, and it's the retelling of the stories of King Henry VIII's six wives. And it's a poppy sort of music. It's pretty popular. I know the girl child, she likes at least the music of it that she listens to. I don't know how familiar she is with it overall. But I bring this up because one of the wives, Anne Boleyn specifically, will now be played by Dylan Mulvaney, the man that Bud Light had hired to pretend to be a woman for its marketing purposes. So the men are even now taking those jobs away from women. Now, I'm sorry, but don't we have this whole discussion about how straight people should not be able to play gay people and that non-trans people, according to the left? You hear these discussions all the time. They'll go back and talk to actors who have played trans, and then, there's this expected repentance about how, well, I wouldn't do that today, and, I just really didn't realize the implications of it. But a woman doesn't have to be played by a woman? You people on the left. Nuts. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro claimed that former Vice President Kamala Harris's election team asked whether he was an agent of the Israeli government while discussing his potential as a vice presidential candidate. In a preview of his upcoming book, Where We Keep the Light, published Sunday, The Atlantic reported a section devoted to what he described as unnecessarily contentious questions from Harris's team, particularly former Biden aide Dana Remus. One question, he said, he received during the vetting process: have you ever been an agent of the Israeli government? Well, see, all these Jews. Oh, there's not an anti-Semitic problem within the Democrat Party, is there? Shapiro wrote, "Have I been a double agent for Israel? Was she kidding? I told her how offensive the question was. Remus was just doing her job, I get it, but the fact that she asked or was told to ask that question by someone else said a lot about some of the people around the VP. It says a lot about the Democrat Party." I don't know when... Shapiro's clearly in denial, as a lot of other Jewish Democrats are. You folks got to wake up at some point and realize this is the Democrat Party. Shapiro described further probing about his views on political subjects, such as whether he'd be willing to apologize for some of his comments about protesters at the University of Pennsylvania who built encampments to decry Israel's military campaign in Gaza and in some cases intimidated Jewish students. So he was being probed. Hey, will you apologize to the anti-Semite base of our party as a Jew? This book could be a fun one. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, welcome to the show, everyone. Hour 3. My name is Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. I think it was Friday, yes. Oh, those of you in the 6 a.m. hour. Now, some of you that listen during this period of time are like, I didn't hear Emily. We, on Fridays, as you probably know, we decided some time ago, we swap everyone around so that the audience, as it changes, people don't, well, not everyone has the ability to sit and listen from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., understandably so. And so people who oftentimes listen from 6 to 6:30, that's the time they're able to listen unless they go back to the podcast, and even then sometimes not fully get it all. And those of you who have listened in the 8 o'clock hour have long had the chance to get to know Emily, and she's now, for a period of time anyhow, much earlier we kick off the show, and so a lot of the folks in the 6 a.m. heard her when you all are used to hearing her perhaps, and so that's just why. You just need to tune in earlier to hear her. But one of the things that she talked about was having Will on her team, her husband, and he's an awesome guy, and the fact that while she, of course, has long been established in providing the absolute best when it comes to home buying and selling, when it comes to land, like big, ranches or acreage out, that's an area of expertise for him. So they got the best of both worlds, regardless of where you're looking to be in the city, and maybe that involves selling off a great deal of land. And so having the two of them working together is just the absolute best combination you can get. So whatever your wants, your desires, your needs are in terms of home buying and selling, you are completely covered with Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. There's been a lot of international focus. Venezuela has largely taken a back seat to Greenland and to Iran. When it comes to the situation in Iran, there is what, if it stands consistent, the confusion as to what it is that Trump is planning on doing or planned on doing but didn't do, or that this is all part of how Donald Trump operates to make sure the opposition can't really get a bearing on what is happening. And I think even to Trump supporters, I get the instinct. It's like, what is going on here? He said locked and loaded, and then, it sounded as if we're going in, and then the airspace was all cleared out, and then all of a sudden Trump's like, oh, hey, they told me they'll stop killing people, so I called off the attack. But, does he really believe them? And that confusion is part of his arsenal of tools. At least that he's done. Now, listen, I suppose that one can make an argument that that isn't what's going on here, but I default to his past performances, and his past performances utilize that confusion, if you will, as a way to keep the opposition off balance. There was it Thursday evening? I believe we talked about it last Friday. A period of time in which all of the airspace was down, like the map that shows all of the flight paths was going around, and the Iranians had sealed off their airspace, and that they were essentially putting themselves in a mode to prepare to be attacked. Some are arguing that was the whole point, that Trump's public announcement and the chatter that made it appear as if it was almost imminent that there was going to be a mass-scale military action against Iran was to watch the Iranians run and hide to see where it is they run and hide. If they have any sort of assets, any missile defenses that can be utilized in any meaningful way, and they, in a situation like that are going to bring them out or hide them away, that it essentially was one giant intelligence gathering fake to get the Iranians to behave as if we were coming, or the Israelis were coming, or anyone was coming, in order to carry out a military operation for the purposes of knowing this is what they're going to do. Now, some may go so far as to think that's what Trump wants them to think that he was doing. Again, all part of the formula of confusion that he utilizes as a tool of leverage. The one thing I do know for sure is that Trump, in my assessment, left no room for interpretation regarding whether or not the United States would help the Iranian people should they come under attack by their own government. I mean, he's very, very clear, locked and loaded, saying, keep it up. We will be there to help you. Regardless of how one feels about whether we should or should not, that marker has been laid. And now it becomes an issue of credibility. The Obama administration, rightfully so, got noted in really eviscerating any sort of credibility in the international community that Obama may have had when he talked about a red line in Syria. And if they use chemical weapons, then that is the red line. If they cross it, it's going to be on militarily. And they crossed it, and we did not do anything. That was a signal to the rest of the world. And while, again, Trump's ability to create confusion and chaos and to make it virtually impossible to predict what it is he's going to do, that is an important tool that he does utilize. But at the same time, when you declare a red line, when you promise a people, if you come under attack, we will be there to help you, if you don't follow through on that, that does have implications. And I believe Trump knows that 100%. He understands that if you aren't willing to follow through on a promise that you make, then the power of your threats diminishes greatly. And you lose that leverage. You lose the credibility that can be used as a tool in order to get what you want. Now, that isn't to say that the United States has to be involved. There could, if by any other means, the Iranian people are able to, let's say, even on their own, overthrow the Iranian government and maybe you've got some sort of humanitarian crisis because of that, and you got to supply them with food or, just whatever the situation is, that we wouldn't be involved in that capacity. But I don't think that as long as the regime falls, the credibility of the United States, I believe, will stay intact, even if it wasn't at our hands. And I'm sure that that's the desire of the Trump administration. Some people have predicted that the regime will continue to be in control and that we will not assist the people, even if it comes to that. And I think in terms of credibility, that would be a mistake. Regardless of if I think we should or shouldn't be there, you just got to be realistic about the promise that our country made. I want to talk a bit about the situation with Denmark and the misunderstanding of what Trump is doing. And some of it is purposeful because of the anti-Trump forces, but I think some of it is a genuine misunderstanding as well. And once you know what is going on and you get what Trump is doing, it makes more sense. You may not like it, and you may disagree with the approach, but it at least makes sense. So we've got that coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 47. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 29. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 48. And taking a look at Thursday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 45.
Someone had texted in asking about the Charlie Kirk show and what happened with it. And obviously, with his assassination back in September, some decisions had to be made. And there was, for a period of time, sort of a rotation of different hosts that were in there. There was some pretty consistency, Andrew Colvett and Blake Neff. And so it was before the holiday, Salem Radio Network announced that the Scott Jennings show is going to be taking 2 hours of that Charlie Kirk time slot, and then there's another host in there as well that had sort of been sharing some of the duties, Alex Marlowe. Now, the version that Andrew and Blake had been doing of the Charlie Kirk show, that is still going to be in podcast form. They're going to continue to do their thing, but in terms of the radio offerings at Salem Radio Network, and that was they're the ones that carried the Charlie Kirk show. That is what they are doing with that time slot, is having Scott Jennings and then again Alex Marlowe pick up an hour of it. And so I thought I'd mention that someone had texted it in, and it kind of mentioned some of those changes taking place, but not with enough frequency that everybody's going to hear it. So that's the decision that Salem Radio Network made there, and so that is what we will and have been carrying now, and so that is from 8 to 11, right after Mark Levin's show. All right, Denmark ramping up defenses in Greenland as Trump zeroes in on control of the territory, and the rhetoric has gotten a bit heated, and the presentation here is that our European allies in NATO are so panicked that Donald Trump is going to invade Greenland that they are militarily setting up for the fight. That is not what is happening here. We have seen a similar back and forth on a couple of different occasions when it comes to our European allies and specifically NATO. And one of them was regarding energy policy. You may recall that Trump called out Germany specifically at a meeting in Europe during his first term for buying energy from the Russians, and publicly shamed the Europeans, specifically Germany, for doing that, noting that, the whole purpose of NATO is to protect from nefarious outside influences, be it military strike or otherwise. And here you are making yourself reliant on one of the biggest dangers to the security of Europe and the security of NATO, by definition, by becoming dependent on the energy so they can cut off your energy at any time. Not to mention you are helping fund the Russians. And Trump got a lot of pushback by Democrats and a lot of pushback by the media because that's not how you're supposed to treat our allies. And he was creating divisions, and he was causing rifts in our alliance. The alliance was in danger because of the way that he was calling them out. Well, he was doing it for the purposes of strengthening the security of NATO and strengthening the security of Europe, because he was absolutely right. 100% correct. We also saw this give and take regarding the amount of dollars that all the other countries contribute to NATO. And Trump went so far as to talk about, hey, listen, if everyone's not going to participate in a meaningful way here, I don't know why the United States is either. Maybe we'll get out. And everyone went nuts over that. Trump is the biggest danger to NATO. Trump is going to be responsible for NATO falling apart. And what was Trump's ultimate goal? It was to make NATO stronger. And by the leadership of NATO's own admission, Trump did exactly that. NATO is stronger today than ever because Donald Trump, playing the bad guy a little bit, he's being the adult in the room. The situation with Greenland is the exact same thing. And we are watching the exact same sort of response. Oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever. Oh my gosh, our NATO alliance is fracturing apart. There was one, so what idiot is this? Senator Mark Warner, Democrat, Virginia, on Sunday's Face the Nation regarding this issue, saying that the only security threat to Greenland right now is the United States. The short-sighted nature that some of these people are taking when it comes to this particular issue is a dangerous one. Donald Trump, once again, when it comes to NATO, is attempting to get NATO in a place in which it is able to do its job most effectively. And what he has witnessed and has been willing to be a leader on and try to fix is what NATO has allowed to occur, and that is the encroachment into essentially NATO territory by Russia specifically and China specifically. China more so when it comes to infrastructure, and this is due to Greenland being given a little bit of autonomy by Denmark some time ago, and China taking advantage of it. And I know some of you have heard this before, but NATO has allowed, and the United States did as well, China to infiltrate areas of the globe in our hemisphere that are strategically advantageous for China and strategically disadvantageous for not just the United States, but for NATO. And Trump, much like dealing with the issue of NATO allies becoming reliant on Russian energy, and much like our NATO allies not kicking in their fair share, and instead of being totally reliant on the United States to fund everything, Trump is doing this with one goal in mind, and that is to try and prevent this increased encroachment into this part of the world by the Chinese and by the Russians before it's too late. I understand some people may not like the way he's going about it, but it's very important to understand why he is doing what he's doing. I thought it was a very interesting question. In fact, I want to play the audio of this. This is Scott Bessent on with Meet the Press. No, not Meet the Press. Yes, Meet the Press. And it's the fact that Trump has talked about using the emergency powers to impose tariffs, to try and leverage the tariffs to get Greenland under U.S. control. Now, I believe Trump's ultimate goal is just for our security beefing itself up in terms of NATO. I don't know that Trump, and I could be wrong on this, Trump's ultimate goal is just to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and being wise, whether that's the United States in charge of Greenland or Denmark. But the problem is Denmark and NATO, they have not been doing it. And he sees it. And so his position here is, let us do it because no one else is doing this. We need to do this. I do believe that what could be Trump leaning towards the United States actually acquiring Greenland as opposed to simply wedging NATO into taking on this responsibility is fear that once he's gone, NATO will go back to its old ways again, making the whatever sort of security improvements just essentially go away. And believing that at least if the United States is in charge of it, then we will be in charge of it, and that will diminish the likelihood that China will continue to try and encroach in our part of the hemisphere. Though I don't believe that it will. I think it is less likely than it would be under NATO. And I believe that's probably what Trump's assessment is as well. Anyway, got to take a break. We've got a traffic update coming up, and then I want to play audio here that demonstrates the difference in thinking between the Trump administration and the way everyone else deals with situations like this.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 47. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 29. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 48. And taking a look at Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 45.
Scott Bessent on with NBC Meet the Press yesterday. Make that Sunday with Kristen Welker and this battle over Greenland and NATO allies like fighting back, and we don't like it. And the sending of military assets, as symbolic as it may be, to Greenland is not because of fears that the United States is going to invade Greenland, but because they are trying to demonstrate, okay, we get it. We have been very unserious about making sure we recognize the dangers of China specifically, as well as Russia encroaching in that region of the world. So we'll step up, just like we did when it came to financial contributions to NATO. We got it. We understand the point. We did then. We stepped up. We understand the point you're making now. So here's what now. Is it going to be enough? Trump at this point is essentially saying, no, we're the only ones that are going to be able to really make sure that we utilize Greenland in a way that is in the best interest of not just the United States, but NATO as well. And the use and the talk of tariffs being utilized in order to try and get our NATO allies to see our way in this thing. I want to play two bits of audio. The first, both with Scott Bessent on NBC's Meet the Press. And here he is essentially explaining why it is that Trump is doing what he's doing.
Let's look back. Denmark has a terrible history with Greenlanders. There was forced sterilizations up until the 80s or the 90s. So all of a sudden, now that the U.S. has expressed an interest, there is this new interest. And again, the United States needs to be in control to prevent a war, and that we do not want to get dragged into someone else's war.
Well, but this is about the United States' relationship with its allies, NATO allies, again, reacting with alarm. They're warning that this move to annex Greenland could, in fact, destroy NATO. So let me just put this to you bluntly. Is Greenland or NATO more essential to the United States' national security?
Well, that's obviously a false choice. That's a
not from the perspective of European leaders.
The European leaders will come around and they will understand that they need to be under the U.S. security umbrella. What would happen in Ukraine that if the U.S. pulled its support out? The whole thing would collapse. That the U.S., Kristen, to be clear, since 1980, the U.S. has spent U.S. military spending versus NATO military spending, we have spent $22 trillion more dollars than the Europeans have. That we are peace through strength. And the Europeans now are only trying to play catch up. And that is only through President Trump. President Trump believes in NATO, but he does not believe in the American people being dragged in.
Well, in terms of the cost.
Okay, so explaining to some degree what we were breaking down earlier, and that is this is all about getting, be it by way of NATO or the United States, the ultimate security of all. And that would be the United States, but also NATO. And, he threw in there some little jabs at how poorly Denmark had actually been in terms of running Greenland anyway. So, it's not as if they'd be any worse off. But the second bit of audio here is further explaining what the, quote, emergency is, because this is what the Trump administration is arguing as justification specifically for the tariffs.
What is the national emergency that justifies these new slate of tariffs?
The national emergency is avoiding a national emergency. That it is a strategic decision by the president. This is a geopolitical decision, and he is able to use the economic might of the U.S. to avoid a hot war. So why wouldn't we do that? Same thing. That what if that we had a national emergency coming with these gigantic trade balances that we had with the rest of the world. I've been in financial markets for 30, 45 years. Much better to be strategic, avoid the emergency.
You're saying it's a national emergency, but you're also saying it's a threat that's years away. How can both be true, Mr. Secretary?
Because you are avoiding creating the emergency, Kristen. What if during the great financial crisis, someone had raised their hand in 2005, 2006 and said, stop with subprime mortgages? But no one did. President Trump is raising his hand, and that is preventing the emergency.
Now, the way he explained it, it does open itself up to a bit of mockery, though that isn't deserved mockery. And, well, we've got to prevent the emergency. That's the emergency is the fact that there will be an emergency if we don't do something to stop the emergency. What he's getting at here, though, is accurate. And he tried to use a financial crisis as an example. I think 9/11 is a better example. After 9/11, we had the 9/11 Commission for the purposes of figuring out what we missed, why our eye wasn't on the ball, and to make sure that we never were caught flat-footed again. Trump is operating as a president in a way that other presidents have not operated, and that is, what does the country look like even when I'm gone? Trump understands, arguably better than any other president we've ever had, what it is that the Chinese see in terms of the long game. He gets it. He knows what is going to come, what will be here eventually regarding China if we don't do something to stop it now. Now, it's much, much, much easier to look at a scenario like that and say, well, not only am I not going to be president when that day comes, I probably won't even be alive. So why on earth would I mess with it? But this is where Trump is different. As much as, or as difficult as it is for a lot of people to believe, Trump really, truly, genuinely wants to leave this country a better place, not only the day that he leaves, but to be on a trajectory that helps guide us to that better place, to that safer place, regardless of who's in power. And so that means looking down the road and essentially, frankly, operating the same way that the Chinese do, and that is not looking to tomorrow, but looking towards the next generation and the generation after that. It's a similar reason that Trump took out Iran's nuclear capabilities. It wasn't because there was some sort of imminent threat, and we knew that they were going to construct with the materials and the capabilities they had a nuclear bomb, and it was imminent that they were going to set it off at any moment. It was the knowledge that, in all likelihood, they would do it at some point because they've said that they would. And is it easier to deal with that problem now or when it is imminent, or God forbid, after it does occur? We went after this self-reflection after 9/11 and the fact that bin Laden had been offered to the United States on numerous occasions, but the Clinton administration turned it down because he hadn't, quote, done anything to us yet, even though we knew he wanted to. And frankly, I understand why he said no. Because of, he would have been probably accused of doing things unnecessarily. Bin Laden was a name that the vast majority of people had never even heard of before. He hadn't, quote, done anything. He just ranted about taking on the United States. And are we going to go ahead and start rounding up everyone in the world that starts doing it? So I get it. Unfortunately, it resulted in 9/11, our decision to not do that, to not think down the road. Now, I'm not arguing that, I'm not trying to convince you to suddenly see things Trump's way or to convince you the way he is going about it is the right way. I'm simply conveying why it is that he's doing what he's doing. And he could take the route that everyone else does with it. That's not my problem because even if it does happen, it's not going to be on my watch. That's just not how he operates. He feels it is his responsibility because he understands what China is doing and he understands what their long-term goals are in regards to the United States, and he has the ability in his assessment to put a stop to it now, or at least to do something to potentially stop it from occurring in the future, and so he feels that that's what he has to do as President of the United States. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All right, good text. Incorrect assumption, but ultimately good text. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Nick, I may be wrong, but it sounds like you don't know that we have had military presence in Greenland since the 60s. The presidents occupying us built dice stations to monitor the borders of the U.S. and Air Force bases, as an example, have been in agreement with the Danish for our protection. So we have had and still do have a watch over the northern borders of the United States. There's no need for us to, quote, take over what we have been managing for all this time. This is not the problem. The problem originates from, I want to say it's the 90s, I forget the exact year, in which Denmark decided to allow Greenland to start making these unilateral deals with other countries. Up until then, Denmark did not allow Greenland to come up with any agreements with other countries on their own. They had to approve absolutely everything. And the decision was made to give Greenland the autonomy to build these relationships on its own. China began taking great advantage of it. Much like a game of Axis and Allies, getting its footprint closer and closer and closer and deeper in to this region of the world. This is something that last week I talked about, the fact that I want to say it was, maybe it was in January, there was an assessment that was released for 2025 by the Danish intelligence, and it assessed that this was, again, this was an assessment through all of 2025, that the single largest threat right now that is faced in the whole context of Greenland and Denmark is China. And their slow but sure encroachment in this region of the world because of these relationships that the Greenland government has allowed China to take advantage of. It's the overall, it's, we have military bases in Japan as well, but we don't get to decide what relationships Japan has with other countries. We have military bases all over. That it's not the issue of whether or not we have military assets. It is the issue of the fact that Greenland as a country has been allowed to create relationships which really have been created by China in a way that is greatly disadvantageous to this region of the world. Now, as I said, some people may disagree with the way that we're going about it, but it isn't the existence of a military base or military bases that is a point of contention here. It's these relationships that China has been taking advantage of with Greenland, and Trump calling out Denmark for allowing it to occur, Denmark's own intelligence recognizing that this has become a problem that is quickly getting out of control, and Trump trying to essentially put someone, the United States, in charge that will stop these sorts of agreements from continuing forward and maybe even be able to roll some back. So that's the difference. I want to share with you some, I know that sounds boring, economic numbers, but there increasingly is a number of things that are occurring economically that are giving the forecasters great hope for 2026, and that it will be much, much better than 25. This, of course, is what the Trump administration has been banking on regarding the midterm elections, that this what seems to be a dismissive approach by the Trump administration regarding the economy not getting better, that it wasn't dismissive because there was a lack of recognition that things weren't getting really better for the average American to the degree they wanted, but a belief that once the midterms occur, people are going to feel it. And so all we can do is just sit and wait for this start to kick in, or for this stuff to start to kick in. And according to a lot of these numbers, it looks like they so far are potentially on track for having that economy that they're hoping that all of us will start to feel better. So I'm going to share some of that coming up. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air winter. It is going to appear later this week, and it's going to get very cold at night. If your heating system is making odd noises, you have uneven heating in your home, or maybe it's just been a while since you've had a checkup, now is the time to have Russell out before it gets really, really cold. Now, the Foreman team, they work on multiple heating systems. They offer maintenance, service repairs, and new unit installs, and they do residential and commercial jobs. And if something does pop up after those normal business hours, they also offer a 24/7 emergency service line as well. So make sure that you prepare before the colder weather hits, and if it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home or business, make sure to reach out today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Economists have sharply upgraded their outlook for the U.S. economy under President Donald Trump, with the latest Wall Street Journal survey showing a dramatic reversal from the pessimism that dominated forecasts through much of 2025. The January 26, 2026 survey of 82 economists forecasters reveals recession fears have receded sharply, while growing expectations have jumped, particularly for the near term. Forecasters now expect substantially stronger economic momentum heading into Trump's second year in office than they anticipated just 3 months ago. The probability of a recession occurring within the next 12 months stands at 27%, down from a peak of 45% in April of 25, when many economists panicked following the Trump administration's Liberation Day tariff policy. This is around the average chance during the post-pandemic period. The shift in sentiment is more pronounced in near-term growth forecast. Economists now expect fourth quarter 25 GDP growth of 2.23% on an annualized basis, nearly double the 1.14% they forecast just 3 months earlier in October of 25. First quarter 26 growth expectation also jumped significantly, rising to 2.13% from 1.47% in the October survey. For full year 2025, on a fourth quarter over fourth quarter basis, forecasters now anticipate 2.35% growth, up from 1.92% expected in October of 24. The upgrade suggests economists believe the economy is carrying stronger momentum into 2026 than previously anticipated, potentially giving Trump more room to pursue his policy agenda without triggering an economic downturn. Expectations for job creations have also improved substantially. Economists now forecast average monthly payroll gains of 64,535 over the next 4 quarters, a 31% increase from the 49,367 jobs per month predicted in October of 25. The unemployment rate is expected to remain near historic lows, with forecasters predicting a rate of 4.52% in June of 2026, essentially unchanged from the 4.50% rate they anticipated 3 months ago, and below the April panic forecast of 4.68%. The improved labor market outlook represents a significant shift from concerns earlier in 2025 that Trump's policies might trigger job losses or economic weakness. The stronger growth forecast have led economists to revise their expectations for Federal Reserve policy as well. Forecasters now expect less aggressive rate cutting from the central bank, with the federal fund rate anticipated to reach 3.08% by year-end 26 compared to 3.34% expected in April of 2025. Long-term interest rates have moved higher as recession fears faded. The 10-year Treasury yield is now forecast at 4.15% by June of 26, up 45 basis points from the 3.70% predicted in October of 2026. Despite stronger growth outlook, inflation expectations remain relatively contained, with the economists forecast consumer price inflation of 2.8% by June of 2026, down from 3.03% in October. And the transformation in forecaster sentiment has been dramatic in the spring of 25. Nearly half of surveyed economists believed a recession was likely within 12 months, but all of that is turning around. So this is on track for what the Trump administration has been arguing, that 2026 was going to be the beginning of the average family feeling these improvements. Glenn Beck is coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.